How to strengthen your glutes with the Single Leg Glute Bridge. Unleash your power, achieve your potential. I'm John Calarco, Holistic Health and Performance Coach. If you want to start to build more advanced levels of strength in your glutes, hamstrings, and core, and you want to continue to optimize the posture of your pelvis and make sure it's in more of a neutral position so we're not stuck in this excessively tilted forward anterior pelvic tilt causing excess extension in the lower spine, we want to continue to optimize the posture there and get more neutral and improve the ability for your hips to work reciprocal, which means one is flexing while the other is extending as much as possible, then the Single Leg Glute Bridge is going to be a great progression for you. It's also going to help you prevent injuries in the hips and the lower back because the stronger that the hips are, the more resilient and the less stress that the low back has to take on whenever we move. All right, so the Single Leg Glute Bridge is a progression on from the glute bridge and from the bridge march, both of which I showed you in previous videos, okay? So first I showed you how to do the glute bridge properly by itself so you could develop a baseline level of strength in hip extension in this bridging hip hinge pattern, only we're laying on the ground doing this hip hinge. And then I showed you the bridge march, which is a more advanced progression from the glute bridge, but not quite as hard as this one. So I'd highly recommend that after you watch this video, if you haven't developed your foundation of strength there, to go back and watch those videos. I'll link them here on the video for you, and I'll put them in the description below. But those exercises are going to lay the foundation to this one, which is a little bit more of an advanced glute and hip and core training exercise, all right? As I alluded to just a moment ago, this is also an important exercise to help us improve the strength and the function of our hip hinge pattern, okay? So if you don't know, the hip hinge pattern is our feet about hip width apart, maybe slightly wider, and we're maintaining a neutral spine as we hinge the hips straight back with a slight knee bend, or potentially with more of a knee bend if we're deadlifting or lifting something off the floor. So the Single Leg Glute Bridge here is going to complement the hip hinge, and it's essentially doing a hip hinge, just laying on your back. As you'll see, it's the same pattern of hips going forward and back, going into hip flexion and then out into hip extension, only we're laying on the ground. So it's a great exercise here to continue to help build the function and performance of our hip hinge movement pattern, which is one of the 7 fundamental human movement patterns. All right, so really important exercise for us to develop the strength within. Now, to set up for the Single Leg Glute Bridge exercise, we're gonna lay down onto our back on the mat, okay? We're gonna relax the head and neck, set ourselves in a long spine position, takes the arms to the sides, and just relax, okay? Maybe you wanna have your palms up to really make sure that you don't use your hands at all on the exercise. Then we're gonna take the knee, one knee, up towards the chest. And actually what I like to start people out with doing on the Single Leg Glute Bridge is to hold on to one knee, all right? So if we're holding on to one knee, what that's gonna do is it's gonna help us make sure that we maintain this hip flexed position as we do the glute bridge, the single leg bridge. So to set my other heel, I'm gonna set it about a foot length away from my butt, maybe slightly less, okay? A good way to do that is to take your knee up over the hip, set your knee at a 90-degree angle, and then bring the heel straight down to the ground. Generally, that's about the right position. Now, if you set your foot further away from you, it's gonna work your hamstring a little bit more. If you set the foot closer to you, it's gonna work your hamstring a little less, and that's gonna put more on the glute. So play with the right distance for you to find the position where you're feeling what you wanna be feeling. I typically will have clients do this exercise in a pretty balanced way. So we're getting nice activation through the glutes and the hamstrings. So again, usually that 90-degree angle cue, okay, of the knee as we do the exercise is where I like to have people. But again, if you wanna bias more of your hamstring, or if you wanna just isolate more of the glute and you really wanna take the hamstring out of it, maybe you need to do that because maybe your hamstrings are a little bit stronger than your glutes are, whatever the case may be, then you wanna have the heel a little bit closer. So find the right distance for you based on your goals. Then again, we're gonna hold up on that other leg. We're gonna lock that leg up. So we're in hip flexion here, all right? And then from there, we're gonna initiate the exercise. To do so, we're gonna exhale and drive up, driving that heel through the floor. All right, as you can see, I like to have my toes up so that I can really focus on that heel drive. All right, also gets us a little extra strength work in that lower leg muscle at the same time. All right, that anterior tibialis muscle that we have in the front of the shin. All right, so once we're set, again, exhale, press that heel straight into the ground. All right, Drive up and try to get that knee, hip, and shoulder all in a straight line. That's the goal here so we can really achieve full hip extension. So again, exhale. Bring on that full glute squeeze. Come on down. And again, use those arms for assistance in this variation to make sure that we're maintaining that nice full hip flex position at the top. Okay, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're working that reciprocal ability of one hip to be in great extension or full extension and then the other hip to be in full hip flexion, which is what we want to accomplish in most of our sprinting or running patterns. Is we want to have maybe not full range of motion of hip extension and hip flexion, but we want to have a sufficient ability to extend one hip and to flex the other. That's locomotion, that's gait. And it's a really important ability to have to make sure we're optimizing our gait function, which gait is another one of the 7 fundamental human movement patterns. So we're improving 2 fundamental human movement patterns here, the hip hinge and gait at the same time. Okay, so that's the first variation, the first position that I like to practice this exercise and have people really master it here first. Okay, once you've really gotten it down here, you're achieving full hip extension, you're keeping that knee up, all right, which obviously is easy because you're using the arms. Then we're going to take the arms out of it. We're going to just simply use the hip flexor muscles on their own to hold that position. So now we'll take the hands to the side, relax. We're going to exhale, drive up, same thing. Achieve that full hip extension, okay? Feeling that full glute contraction, trying to get that knee, hip, and shoulder in a straight line, and make sure that this knee doesn't do that as you come up, okay? Because that is not what we want here. We want that hip fully flexed. It could lead us to that big mistake here of letting the spine overextend, right? So I'm doing extension of my spine to create motion here, which is not what we want. The spine should be in a neutral position the entire time, or even slightly flexed as we're flexing up that hip flexor muscle. So again, make sure that that knee does not come down as you do that. All right, now often what I'll do is I'll have people take a ball and put that in the hip if I really feel the need to hold them accountable to maintaining that position. So I just have a ball here, all right, wrapped up in a sock because that ball is a little bit slippery for me here. All right, and we're just locking it in position. Same exact thing, really flex and drive and lock that ball into the hip crease, okay? That's a great way to hold yourself accountable automatically to maintaining that proper hip flexion, all right, which is again gonna help us accomplish that goal of working great hip extension on one leg, great hip flexion on the other, and make sure that we avoid that biggest common mistake here on bridges, which is extending through the lower spine excessively. All right, now, just another mistake that we want to make sure we don't avoid. I spoke to it already, but I just want to emphasize it here because it's so important and it often really goes missed on this exercise because, all right, as we flex the hip up, it becomes a little more challenging for us to maintain or to get to that full hip extension, okay, versus when our hip is here and we're double leg, it's quite a bit easier to get full hip extension. So make sure that second mistake is make sure that you are achieving full hip extension. I know I mentioned it already, but I just really want to make sure I emphasize this, that you're not short, all right? Full glute contraction, get to as full of hip extension as you can, maintaining that leg up. Again, that's why the ball is a great tool because you don't have to think so much about, okay, am I keeping my hip up enough and achieving full hip extension? You don't have to wonder if your leg is too low or not. You know it's in the right position if you have the ball in there. So again, in the beginning, I'll often have people really use that addition to this exercise to make sure that we're creating an environment where, again, we don't have to think so much. We're just feeling our way into positions, which is what great movement is all about. Feeling our way into patterns instead of thinking about every little detail, because there's a lot of details going on in exercises like this one, as you can tell, with all the detail we're going through here to make sure that we get it right. So the more we can create an environment for ourselves to not have to think and literally self-limit ourselves that we can't do the exercise right, that ball is going to pop out if I let my leg out. All right, it's a great addition. So I'd highly recommend it for you if you're just starting out doing single leg bridges. If you're more advanced and you're confident in keeping that leg up, great. You don't need the ball, then you just, you know what you're doing, you can lock it in. All right, I'll give you one more variation on this if you want to bring up the challenge even a little bit more. All right, on this one, we'll go ahead and drive up that leg into a straight position, okay? This makes the leg just a little bit heavier, so it's almost like adding weight, right? So now you're taking the full weight of your leg over your hips. That's gonna make it a little more challenging. So I'll show you on this side so you can see my bridge up. So I got my leg straight. Doesn't matter, toes pointed, toes up. If you wanna, if your hamstrings are maybe feeling a little tight that day, or hopefully they shouldn't if you've been doing the hamstring mobility exercises I showed you in the past on previous videos, but If you want to, you can point the toes a little bit just so you can achieve that leg really straight up over the hip. And then same thing, we're just gonna drive up, okay? Exhale, driving that heel through the floor, achieving that full glute squeeze, full hip extension. That exhale is gonna engage more abdominals there for us as we do the exercise, okay? So again, doesn't really matter, toes up, toes up toward the shin or up towards the ceiling, you know, whatever's most comfortable so you can get that leg over your body as much as possible to create that extra challenge of the weight of the leg. All right, so that's pretty much it in terms of the common mistakes to avoid. Again, make sure you play and find the right position for your foot, depending on your goals of how much you want to use your hamstring, how much you want to use your glute. Again, I typically recommend it to be right about in the middle so that we're getting a fine balance between the glutes and the hamstrings as we do hip extension, which is what we do in most real life movement and sports. We're getting a balanced activation through both. But again, if you're looking to just develop the shape of your glutes more, you don't want to grow your hamstrings, or you know, you have certain goals like that, then okay, maybe you want to bring the foot closer to your butt so that you're not using the hamstring as much. Okay, so there can be, you know, circumstances where that may be a better fit for you. Okay, so be aware of those positions. Make sure you avoid those common mistakes. And then in terms of how many sets and reps we want to do of this exercise, we want to think about what level we're at in terms of our strength, okay? So generally about 8 to 12 reps is gonna be about right on this exercise, you know, doing about 2 to 3 sets. But again, depends on your level of function and strength in your glutes and hamstrings. If you're just kind of starting out doing your glute bridges, maybe you've progressed on from doing the glute bridge and doing the bridge march. Now you have the base level of strength to do this exercise, then I would start doing sets of about 10 reps, maybe 12, 10 to 12, 2 to 3 sets, probably, you know, 2 times a week is probably enough, you know, in your program, in your training program, to accomplish the strength benefits that you want from this exercise. You could do it 3 if you want to do it a little bit more, but typically I like to vary the exercise selection a little bit more than just doing the same hip extension exercise in a program, you know, for 3 days a week. But again, 2 to 3 times a week, doing those 2 to 3 sets of about 10 to 12 reps. If you're more advanced and you know you want to lower the reps down and you want to do the straight leg variation, great, you could do 8 to 10 reps. Again, find the right amount for you where you can do perfect technique and it gives you that great challenge of about 7 or 8 out of a scale of 1 to 10 when we do the exercise. You know, I'll show you future exercises where we make this one even more challenging and add different ways to add resistance like dumbbells and whatnot. So make sure you subscribe, stay tuned in the channel for those videos to come. Now, in terms of when you should do this exercise in a workout, that's a common question that I'll get on this one and many exercises. And the answer to that is, depends again on your level. If you're just kind of starting out, developing your glute and hamstring strength, maybe you're still developing some mobility, right? Maybe you haven't opened up your mobility yet. Can be a great exercise to do right after you do your half kneeling hip flexor stretch, after you do even your hamstring mobility drills, because right after those exercises that we just opened up new mobility, now we're adding stability right on top, which helps us cement that new mobility, those new range of motions more, and can be a really effective thing to do, again, right after your mobility. So that could be the right spot for you, again, if you're more of a beginner. But again, if you've already kind of developed that foundational level of mobility and stability in the double leg glute bridge and the bridge march, then most likely you're gonna want to add this exercise to the end of your workouts, all right, more towards, you know, maybe your last series of core. You know, most of the programs that I program for people have a core circuit or series or superset, you know, in the last portion of the exercise, the last exercises. So that's typically where this exercise will end up falling, you know, depending on your goals. So again, depending on your goals, you can use it at the beginning of your workout, or you can use it at the end of the workout as part of a core circuit, as part of a little, you know, just burnout for your glutes or whatever your goals are. All right. So I hope this is helpful for you. If it was, go ahead and hit that like button. I would really appreciate that. Drop any comments below if you have any questions on this exercise or how to use it in your training program, how to use it to strengthen your glutes further and develop your glutes the way you want. And again, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on those future videos. Hopefully you didn't miss out on those previous videos of doing the glute bridge, doing the bridge march exercises. Again, I'll link them here on the video and in the description for you so you can go back if you haven't built your strength there, because that's definitely where you want to start. So again, I'll see you in those next videos where we're going to progress on even more. So stay tuned. And until then, unleash your power, achieve your potential.